I've been kind of holding off. Our most frequently asked question leading up to this had to do with vaccinations and some specific protocols, but maybe we do at least just touch on that to the extent that Roland, you and Jeff are comfortable talking about it. You guys saw how, some of the specific questions were worded. This was the main feature of probiotic science. We wanted is kind of the theme, but we sell a lot of digestive enzymes and systemic enzymes. So maybe just a good time to tie in that enzyme conversation a little bit.
For Roland.
Sure. Well, in the last few years, there has seemingly been an uptick of immune-based issues in response to various interventions that people have had to take for a multitude of different reasons. And, like with anything, when time elapses, we see the aftermath and what shows itself in terms of the manifestations and the physical health of said people. So when it comes to that V word and the long-term effects, we're seeing in terms of associative science and what has been reported. I've not myself done this investigation, but there seems to be a selected group of people that have incredibly aberrant, aggressive, inflammatory immune responses. We have seen cardiovascular issues and spike protein blood clots and various things happening as a result of said intervention. And we've also seen that recently there has been some selective observations that bifidobacteria has been targeted and reduced in those people who have taken said interventions. So if I look at all of those three things and I look for the central theme of what's going on, I see the central theme of immune-based inflammation. So we have an immune system that is somewhat compromised or dramatically compromised. We have a microbiome that seems to be programmed to be an inflammatory making machine. And the target of where the ultimate iteration of where this shows up seems to be the cardiovascular system, specifically the heart. Do we know exactly what to do about it yet? No, we do not. Do we have some insights? I believe we do. I'll introduce some thought processes, and Jeff, I let you add and take over. Fundamentally, if we're looking at the microbiome, if we put the pieces together of our earlier conversation, we know that bifido are incredibly fragile. And that was one of the questions that came into the chat. It seems to be bifido is one of the more susceptible organisms to the effects of antibiotics compared to things like lactobacillus or other strains. So to answer why is it so susceptible, it just seems to be the nature of that species' lack of hardiness, if that's the correct word. So that in conjunction with the fact that very few people digest well, and even fewer people probably eat a variety of different fibers that help bifido feed, because bifido is very dependent on what's called bacterial cross-feeding. A lack of things feeding the bacteria and an environment that's inhospitable to the bacteria will essentially make them vacate their home. So using something like a True Bifido Pro or a Theralac Pro post-vaccination would be a highly, highly suggested, specifically the bifido, a highly suggested response if someone is dealing with some kind of post-vaccination inflammatory syndrome. Additionally, we have two very, very powerful and almost ubiquitously, when I mean ubiquitous, anyone on the planet can use them without collateral damage, enzymes called nattokinase and lumbar kinase. And there are some debates as to which one is more powerful, which one does this versus which one does that. I don't think it's a bad idea for most people just to be taking potentially both of them on an ongoing long-term basis. Because the wonderful thing about enzymes is, it's actually on the bottle, accelerated catalysts. What an enzyme does is it targets a very specific product. Every enzyme has its target protein, its target chemical reaction. It's like every lock on a house has a specific key that unlocks it. So if we're seeing inflammatory-like reactions in the cardiovascular system, and those inflammatory-like reactions are building tissue mass in the way that's narrowing the arteries, which is not allowing blood to flow through those arteries, what we can potentially do is understand that certain enzymes might have the ability to help either halt, stop, or potentially and hopefully reverse some of these effects from happening, because what natto and lumbar kinase do is they target various clot proteins like fibrin and fibrinogen, and they start to act upon them and break them down. understanding that cardiovascular plaque and various blockages that we're seeing are never just one thing. You know, like heart disease, if you do an analysis of the plaque that's in there, you will find oxidized cholesterol, you will find dead foam cells, you will find some dead clot proteins, you will find heavy metals, you will find excessive calcium deposits. Not one thing cannot break down all of those things. But if you understand that there is an ability to reverse engineer specific things that work in concert to help break those processes down, then using something like a nattokinase and a lumbar kinase, likely at a higher dose than most people need, likely on an ongoing, if not indefinite basis, because let's be honest, there is no long-term consequence with using something like nattokinase. It won't stop your body from producing its own enzymes. It won't take away the ability of the immune system to do anything. If anything, it's going to help the immune system via, you know, if you roll an ankle and you're walking in a pressure boot, that helps you get around. That's kind of what an enzyme does to a compromised immune system. So in my thought processes and in my suggestions for people, right now, all we know is what we're seeing effects wise, and what we can do with products is attenuate the specificity of where those effects are being felt or experienced in the body. And my headspace goes to, well, if bifido are being selectively targeted, then using not only a probiotic, but a prebiotic that is bifidogenic in nature, this is true fiber, sun spectrum, but also using clot dissolving proteins like nattokinase, like lumbar kinase, like even the Sierra peptidase on an ongoing basis would be a good strategy for anyone who is having unfortunate after effects from said intervention.
Yes, and I'm just from this, I'm just going to share my screen very quickly here so that you all can see where I go, where you can go to find things. This is just a Chrome browser, and I have an extension up here called Google Scholar. I click on Google Scholar and I can type in here S protein and nattokinase. And bingo, you're going to find all kinds of papers from Hindawi, from MDPI, from NIH on exactly how these things are working. And it's a very simple thing to do. You can put in any of the search things you want. Regular Google is not going to get it done for you, though. Google Scholar is just an extension. You can add it to Safari, you can add it to Chrome, you can add it to whichever browser, your Edge that you're using. It's a very easy way to find answers to questions that are scientific. And we can talk about, you know, this paper does this paper does that, but we are a supplement company and we are kind of restricted by the not diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease kind of statements. And we take that very seriously.
Yeah, we've been through three FDA inspections where they sat here at our conference table and, you know, they say jump, we say how high, and we have a what I would say is a great working relationship since we proactively registered ourselves, you know, however many years ago now, you know, 5 to 10, probably closer to 10 years ago. Yeah, great job, you know, touching on that, Jeff, and thanks for showing that just for some of the extra resources I saw from some of the names that pop. You don't have to scroll down very far to get into some good stuff. And that is really an area that we got a ton of questions for, you know, a couple of big handfuls going into this, and then just certainly over the past couple of years.
And from each of those questions, just take 2 or 3 keywords, go into Google Scholar, put them in, and you'll find a paper. And, you know, many people who read papers just look at the abstract and the conclusions because they don't really need to get into the methodology all that much. But, you know, it's a very short read in a lot of cases. You know, maybe a 20-page paper is going to have the abstract on page 1, 1 page of conclusions and 4 pages of references. You know, so, and there's some tables and charts and things of that sort you can always use to verify, and you can double check with another article.